Everybody, welcome back for our fancy alumni history panel. I graduated college during the period of the National Alumni Association, and that was the first alumni association I joined. And it was a very important period in our history because it laid the foundation for what we're doing today. We learned a lot of information on being successful as an alumni group. And so because we don't have that really recorded anywhere, I talked to Wendy McCann, who is a life member of the Tall Chapter of the University of Houston, SMI, about starting the process of building this chapter in our history, because alumni history is as important to the history of the fraternity and sorority as the one you read in the Guide to Membership Education / Overture. So I wanted to start today with this panel discussion of awesome people who Wendy will introduce, but to start this process so that we can start to keep the wisdom that was formed in those years for you guys who are younger than that and for the years to come, because as I'm going to say in a few minutes, you can only build upon what came before you, and the lack of knowledge of that is a hindrance. So I want to introduce Wendy McCann, past Midwest District Counselor and life member of Tall Chapter. Go Cougs!
We're going to do this as an informal panel because we can. So hello, I see mostly folks who came after our collective era, which is excellent. Welcome. This panel, repeating some of what Chris said, was assembled at the request of Chris Foster and the TBSAA Executive Committee to help answer the question, how did we get here? TBSAA did not simply drop down from the great sorority in the sky to be the successful organization it is. So what came before? Little disclaimer, though we did reference actual documents, much of this is our personal memories and recollections, and so therefore it's as accurate as that is. You may have different experiences or have heard other stories, but these are ours. In the early years of Tau Beta Sigma, it was neither typical nor expected for members to remain involved in TBS after graduating or leaving school. Pause if you know Wendy Brain. Some of this introduction comes from an article that Chris Foster and I wrote for the special edition of the podium. So if you don't pick one up, make sure that you have one coming to you somewhere. So those are the early years. We just didn't expect people to remain involved. They went to college, they did their service to their bands, they moved on, professional life, family life, what have you. We had a small number of chapters, a small number of alumni, and so it was basically your active membership, and then you went on with life. If you have ever heard Wava talk, she's like, they found me, and she didn't realize that there was still an organization existing and moving forward. So kind of like that, she moved on. There really weren't enough alumni members to warrant more alumni engagement than that. Then during 50s and 60s, in that time, adult leadership roles in the sorority, chapter sponsor, district counselor, were often held by the wives of the college band directors that were involved in the fraternity. The earliest national officers were sisters who had recently graduated, and board of trustees was usually college band directors or those associated with long-time service to the fraternity. As the number of chapters continued to grow with each year's graduating classes, so more alumni. And when you look back at what's happening at our college and university campuses, many of them were just then starting to form campus alumni associations more formally and realize the potential monetarily and otherwise of help from their campus alumni. So then during the 70s, some of the sororities, older and larger chapters, had grown to where they had a base of alumni members that wanted to participate and needed something to do. And something productive to do. So and then come back for homecoming activities on our campus and alumni marching band. And talk about, hey, sister, look what's going on with you. Let's do something. Yeah, productive is the goal. But they would want to stay in touch and to organize some activities for themselves so that they could get together more often. But few of those groups took steps to become formal alumni chapters, alumni, different spellings, or it was gender specific. And then we move on from there. So that's the very beginning. I'm going to have each panelist introduce themselves. Chris already took care of mine. And then we'll kind of work back this way through the years.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Chris mentioned before, I'm Tamara Henry. I wrote everything down because public speaking, unlike many of people, is not my forte. So I'm spring 92 from University of Maryland, Beta Eta. And then I transferred and became a sister at Epsilon Omega at Morgan State University in Baltimore. And I'm from Silver Spring, Maryland, where I also still reside in Maryland. And we're supposed to do 2 minutes, so I did try and do 2. So I have a BS in business education. I taught business in high school for 10 years. And then I became an IT technician in the same school system. And then I became a dance teacher. So I taught elementary school dance for 5 years. Now I'm a high school dance teacher. So while I was a district officer for Northeast District, I served as district treasurer and district vice president. And during that time, I had an opportunity to work with a lot of the students. And then I took a 10-year hiatus, and that brought me here. Thank you to my fellow district president, Melanie Meehan, who sought me because I saw the email about the actual TBSAA. And I said, yeah, I saw it. And she resent it to me. And I was like, all right, I will apply. So then I spent 8 years as first 4 years. First year, I was just a member. And then the next 3 years, I was the vice chair for TBSAA. And then I was the special projects chair for 4 years. And I'm just going to read this verbatim.
Are we going in order of?
She's just doing her bio.
This is my introduction.
Okay, sorry.
She's just on her bio.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Our meetings are fun too. We've been meeting for the last 2 weeks and it's been awesome. And where was I? All right. So currently I do serve as a faculty liaison to a dance studio where I teach, and being on the board has, being an EC member has taught me what true leadership is. And I have taught them a whole lot about what it means to be on a board. And I give credit to being a part of TBSAA for giving me the knowledge and the opportunities to work in such an awesome group and foster just what it is to be a leader. So that's me.
Hello, my name is Kelly Toomey Edson. I am a life member from the Beta Sigma chapter at the university. Mary Rose is not listening to me. Sorry. I'm a life member of the Beta Sigma chapter of the university. There we go. Wait for my one. I have a long, I was a district officer in the North Central District in the late 90s. Yes, I'm going to say that, late 90s. And then I went on to something we'll be talking about a little bit, kind of this interim organization called the National Alumni Association. It was a joint group. I served on that board, which is why I get to be sitting here with you all today. I was on the steering committee for the TBSAA. I was on the TBSAA leadership for a hot minute. It's mostly because when we left that convention, there was a board of trustee position that was open, and I applied and got appointed to that about a month after the TBSAA started. So I served 8 years on the board of trustees, and I'm currently serving as parliamentarian, so I may have to skip out in a few, like, after my little bit, but it's not because I don't all love you. I just can't clone myself yet.
Hi, everyone. My name is Debbie Harris Kaplan, and I actually was a member of the national. Well, let's start out. I'm a life member from the University of Florida. Go Gators. Yes, thank you. And Beta Xi chapter. And then I was very involved in the Southeast District. I served as vice president, and I was counselor. I also was an alumni officer I'm not even gonna tell you when, but a long time ago. And so I served on, I got elected to the National Council of Tau Beta Sigma in 1991 and continued on the council until my presidency, which was 1997 to 1999. And in my report on my era of this, I will tell you a little bit more, but I had the alumni was in my portfolio for 4 years. So from 91 to 95. So as national officer. So I have a lot of background of kind of where we were. Currently, I live in Houston, Texas, and I am a full-time mother, although my kids are grown, and a community volunteer, and absolutely so much learned in these rooms at Tau Beta Sigma over years.
Hello, everybody. I'm Surobash Kaur, and I'm a life member of the Delta Delta chapter at the University of Massachusetts. I actually looked at my membership, my life card, and my number is number 910. So I don't know what numbers you guys have, but I just like to know that little tidbit. My alumni journey began shortly after graduation from traveling across country for my first national convention in 1977 at UCLA. Missing the 79 national convention, basically to find myself in the big world. However, I did not realize it at the time, but I actually started an LAA, the New England Alumni Association. And I was just looking for it. I brought the membership card, and it's dated 1980 to prove it, which brought me to NatCon 81, where I attended as both the Delta Delta chapter sponsor and a member of the New England Alumni Association. My alumni sister sat as the delegate for, I think she actually sat for the Delta Delta chapter. As District 9 counselor, I was asked to serve on an ad hoc alumni committee. More on that in just shortly. And I was a charter member of the NAA of TBS and KKSI, and was also a charter member of TBSAA. Wendy. I just thought you were, what do we want to do? You just start. I just go? Okay. During the 81 to 83 biennium, I was the co-chair with Paul Bushmeyer, who at the time was the Kappa Kappa Psi National Member at Large. Other members of our committee were Kathy Rotifer, then TBS National Secretary, Rick Albany, who at the time was the Kappa Kappa Psi District 9 Governor, Carolyn Costley from TBS Psi Chapter, and Deborah Moody, a sister from TBS Delta Beta at West Virginia, in one of the final years before Delta Beta was dissolved as a chapter. Our group met face-to-face twice, once in Boston and once in Missouri. And please remember that this was over 40 years ago. It was in the beginning of the conversation of having alumni from both organizations trying to work together to try and figure out where alumni members of both groups actually fit into the big picture. I'll be honest, I can't exactly remember the outcome. Well, that's what I wrote in my little script that I was going to say, But when we finally got together here at National Convention, Debbie Kaplan, as she said a couple of seconds ago, she was serving on the, she has all the history of alumni, and she happened to find the report from this that we had proposed from this group of people. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it's kind of like like I said, I didn't know what we did, and I just found out that we kind of just did bullet point things. These are the things we discovered. Our major, they called it major premises. No organization can be everything to everyone. All alumni organizations provide primarily monetary support. Sound familiar? So then another couple of little bullet points here. Oh, we were trying to come up with a rationale for alumni organizations. One of the things we came up with was financial support base for both undergraduate organizations, provide a medium for alumni involvement via the satisfaction of a need for continuing contribution, maintenance of camaraderie developed during undergraduate years. And then we talked kind of about a corporate structure, 2 organizations on paper, separate books, common constitutional provisions, separate offices to meet jointly by constitutional definition, and accountable to the boards of trustees, and fiscal accountability, the same as the national chapter. National presidents and executive secretary, ex officio members. Let's see here. The rationale was to provide alumni identity with I'm just going to say KKY TBS on a national level. All alumni contacts should be made through the national office. Accurate statistical data and for evaluation of purposes and accounting of funds, credibility, all that kind of stuff. But this was what we put together when we were all together. We had to have some sort of something to present. And Paul and I actually went to the 82. This is basically the report that we came up with, having met twice for both organizations. It was very interesting, but like I said, there's just so much, and I can't remember a lot of it. And really don't have a lot of time to go through it, but I think you might get the general picture in just 1 second.
So that was the 80s, the early 80s. And I got on the council in 1991. So you add that up, that's 10 years. And here we were still basically in the same place 10 years later, revisiting, visiting, putting it off to the side. It kind of was one of those things everybody felt differently about alumni. If you were in Tau Beta Sigma, you felt differently. If you're in Kappa Kappa Psi, you felt differently. If you were, and there were varying opinions depending on what region you lived in or what organization you were in or what chapter you were in, because there were so many different opportunities for alumni. So again, my connection as a member of the National Council is nobody wanted to really focus on alumni because you come in your job and you got all these other things to do. But alumni was kind of like, it was there, but it was like nobody had a solution because we never really sat or ever had enough time and enough people to really sit down and talk about it. So I would say that I was in the rooms where it happened, and being, so I was the national treasurer, 91, 93. And there's no national treasurer in any organization anymore because we didn't do the finances. So it was like this job of what do you do as a national treasurer? Well, we'll just throw in alumni over there, you know? And so alumni, I had national treasurer and alumni. And so guess what? I focused on alumni because that is when I was the last national treasurer and the first vice president for special projects. And of course, that at that time, alumni was a special project because we needed to figure it out. We were growing and we had really great people that were sitting in the back of the room at the conventions, district and national. We had them local, but they had no role, or they had no role. And what was happening was all these great people wanted to help the actives, but in helping the actives, they kind of, and I don't want to say this like in a bad way, but they kind of were interfering. You need to vote for that person, or you need to do like, no, that's not what it was about, right? And so, and not to say everyone was like that or anything, but we just needed to find a useful way to take alumni activities from kind of unorganized, and it really was, and I'm going to tell you some other things that you'll see. So I was able to offer in my role as National Treasurer and Vice President for Special Projects 4 years of continuity of a national officer to work on this project. Now I had 2 other counterparts, Tim Greenwell, the first 2 years from KKSI was my partner, and then Scott Soul with the last 2 years. So we were a team on this. So in 91 and 93, I had in my portfolio directing the Alumni Associations of Tau Beta Sigma. It was a challenging and delicate issue because there were varying opinions and feelings across the country. What we were charged with was to analyze the structure, composition, and varying purposes. And so at the time, just to go back, we had an alumni affairs committee that met at convention as part of the active business. Okay, they like you have history and traditions, and okay, you had alumni affairs. So it had been talked about for 10 years, every convention. So just to give you guys some also focus at the time, the structure at the time was that you could be an alumni association on a regional level or a district level, not on a local level. KKSI, you could be on all 3. So the 2 didn't match up. And if you were you had to be a recognized alumni association. We didn't have all the risk management and all that kind of stuff that you have today. But in the local association structures, there were 10 across the country recognized alumni associations that were actually following the rules and doing what they needed to do paperwork wise, et cetera, et cetera. And that comprised of 43 life members and 43 members and 15 life members. I think that's wrong. Okay, yes. So what is that? That's like 50 people that are participating in the alumni associations in the appropriate manner. And we were spending 10 years talking about it, and we weren't, it wasn't useful. It was there, but it was untapped potential. And that's what I saw, is that there was so much more potential. Like, even if you just think about your colleges and universities and how your alumni associations work. They're a fundraising arm, their support, their mentors, they're all kinds of things. But we just didn't have that. And nobody wanted to talk about it and really look at it. So basically what we did was I appointed Barbara Kelly, who was from, and I forgot about this, was a life member from Zeta Psi at University of Central Florida. And she was appointed prior to the 1993 convention. So basically in 91, 92, leading up to the convention, we analyzed everything. And then I appointed Barbara to chair and like kind of let's call it an ad hoc alumni task force to work with our district alumni. Like all the district alumni had like an alumni officer, but they had nothing. They really weren't sure what they were supposed to do. And we had at the time we had all the alumni associations, but it was like helping, like, okay, what do we want to do? Like, what is our next step? And so I already said I worked with Tim. So we looked at like this statistical approach, and we asked, going into that 93 convention, for people across the country to submit to us their thoughts and proposals. So at their district conventions, we wanted them to discuss, what do you see going forward for alumni, so that we had something to talk about when we went to convention. So that was like at district conventions 93. And so we took that information and kind of looked at all these proposals, like we had, let's do this and let's do this and all these proposals. And this group of this alumni task force kind of ended up being the Alumni Affairs Committee. And they looked at everything and said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a joint alumni task force, because this was just TBS, what I just told you about that Barbara had shared and all that. We said this is bigger because when there was a joint alumni affairs committee that met at National Convention in '93, and they're again same thing, was so many different ideas. So we said, so the joint alumni affairs group at the 1993 convention said, you need to put an ad in the news notes, which was our little newsletter, and take applications and set up a joint alumni task force to look at alumni affairs for the next biennium. So that would be 93, 95. So we did that, and Tau Beta Sigma had 6 members. Lauren Copeland represented the North Central District, Darren Hall, Southeast District, Wendy Dangler, which is Wendy McCann for Southwest. Beth Parks and Julie Foster represented the Midwest, Gina Ward, the West, and then Marla Lewinsky served as the chair for Tau Beta Sigma of the Joint Alumni Task Force, and she was from the Northeast. And so for those 2 years, this group discussed, deliberated, debated, and they did it all on their own dime and time. And this was way before FaceTime and Zoom. So I don't even remember how they did it. I think they met in certain places, but they took this to heart because, again, as you see in this room, and those of you that are doing amazing work, on all levels of our sorority, these men and women who were on this joint alumni task force, they wanted to make something concrete and ready so that we could move forward. And that was, and it's funny because then you start looking back and, there's something from the executive director, Tom Searage, who was the executive secretary, where he's like proposing to the councils in 80 something?
Yeah, 82.
Like, you should have a joint alumni association, and kind of information about it. And so it's just, and again, this was like we were already on 2 executive directors from that time. It's like, let's get it done. And that's kind of where we were. And so we knew that alumni were very important to the organization and that they were not being utilized to their full potential. And they're a wonderful resource for the active membership, but they didn't need to be voting on active business. They needed to be voting on alumni business. And so that's really kind of how the shift was made. And so then if you think back at that time, 1995 was the 25th anniversary, the 50th anniversary of Tau Beta Sigma. And also that was the first time that we were on a commercial property for convention. We had shifted away from going to college campuses and staying in dorm rooms. So, and our first convention was at Walt Disney World. So what an awesome place to bring not only the alumni to come, but their families and, and like, hey, let's not just sit in meetings in the back of the room and, vote on stuff that really doesn't pertain to us. Let's go socialize. Let's meet each other. Let's do some things. Let's do something and be, I'm not going to say a foundation because it's not the right word, but let's support something. So what can we support? And again, we were thinking joint. So what do we do joint? The National Intercollegiate Band. And so we were first time on a commercial property. There were 3 people that, and I was in charge of special projects. So another special project at the time was the 50th anniversary, and our national executive director quit. And at the time I was working in events. And so I became the national convention coordinator and really was planning and so this all fit together. So these 3 alumni said, we want to do a separate track for alumni. We want to go to Orlando and we want to like have extra time where we're hanging out and we're doing things and you know what? We want to do a benefit dinner and we want to do it at SeaWorld because we're at Disney. We want to do it at SeaWorld. And that benefit dinner, we're going to do a silent auction there. And at that silent auction is going to benefit the National Intercollegiate Band. So that's how it happened. So I would say Melinda DeClue was, and I can't remember where she was from. She was the Tau Beta Sigma rep of this separate little alumni activities coordinators. And then Tom Harris and Michelle Kinchlow were from KKSI and they were from the Midwest District. I think Melinda may have been too, but their whole thing was that they were planning this separate track for the alumni. And so, and really the main thing at that convention was to take the work of the task force, review it, discuss it, and say, this is what we want to do. So that is like kind of the overview in terms of that. And I just want to read this because I'm going to pass it to Wendy because Wendy was really in the rooms where they decided on what they were going to do. But I think it's really important to know that we had addressed and revisited the issue. There were great strides taken by lots of people. And the 93 Alumni Affairs Committee set up a task force. And then for 2 years, those 12 people, because there were 6 KKSI people, discussed the issues. They asked for feedback and they argued, sought legal counsel. I mean, we did so much and she'll tell you more about it. But that at 1995, we get to the next step. So I think you can take it from there. I hope I didn't rain on your parade.
Oh, I'll fill it in. So I realized in all this that perhaps my introduction is lacking some things that will be helpful here. I remember the Todd chapter in University of Houston. Yes. I graduated in 92. Y'all hush. That's fine. And then my best friend was elected district president in 93. And also because of things I had been doing, it was legitimately reasonable to appoint me to the alumni coordinator position in the Southwest, which is a member of the district council. So as Debbie talked about, I sat with the active members and in their business, knew what was going on there for no particular reason, other than that was the structure that we had. And then we eventually, later on, those offices were removed, which was a whole deal at the time. And the opportunity to be on the task force. Now, you don't know me, most of you, but I had no clue what came before. Many of the people of those 12 members did. I know that we, as somewhere in this task force / steering committee, a task force, I believe. I flew into Chicago. I know that we went and got Chicago style pizza, but I believe that was the only moment that we left the hotel room. And otherwise we were sitting there for a nice weekend talking about what was the structure that we wanted and what would we, recommend for this. We didn't even get to like projects. It was all constitutional. And at the time there still is. We were starting the conversations about insurance. And so we spent a good bit of time as we said, here's the National Alumni Association, it's joint, talking about justifying why we needed dues, what they were going toward, dollar for dollar. Here's your $8 chunk that's going to insurance, and from there, whatever else we did with the rest of the money. But that one I remember because we talked about it a lot. So then the point was, yes, productive membership and it was two, right? Giving alumni members something to do and getting them out of the active business at the same time. think about what we have right now. We'll and think how that fits in. We'll get back to that. The NAA had a national constitution, charter members with charter shingles. We will get a new shingle, a special membership shingle, and all sorts of stuff in that vein that a lot of people get really psyched about, which is awesome.
But there was the group that Wendy first was in was this task force that went to the 95 convention with a plan.
Yeah.
And then that became the steering committee.
Because the
For
first
the-
time we had an alumni track at convention of any sort really was 95. Otherwise, it was either back of the room or ad hoc committee. And then by 97, we had another benefit dinner. We had, how many out here? We had an actual alumni schedule. We
Reception.
had a reception for the NIB concert. So somewhere right in there, we got involved with that. It's unclear to me right now which one was like first.
So in 1995, at this, there was a alumni reception that was given by the boards and the alumni, but then really the alumni took it over in 97.
I remember that lemonade was like $50 a gallon. And I was just like, you got to be kidding me. And that was 97. So think about that for this week. And we had chapter delegate grants, special project assistance funds were some of the names. At some point, the NAA purchased black formal folders for the NIB. Had a Young Alumni Award and a Community Band Recognition Award. I might be stealing some of Kelly's thunder. And then we transitioned to Kelly.
So as you heard, alumni discussion started in 1980 something, early. And then in going into 1993-95, you have the Alumni Affairs Committee that leads into a task force. Then in 95 to 1996, that task force had become a steering committee. And 96 to 97, that steering committee kind of determines what's really going to happen. And at the 1997 National Convention, an alumni association was formed. It was a joint organization called the National Alumni Association of Kappa Kappa Psi and Tau Beta Sigma. It was made up of 12 directors. This is where we get into the fun kind of politics of stuff. It had 12 directors. You would have 2 directors from every district, one represented and elected by the alumni. It was from NAA started in July 1996. I was still active then, we'll just say that. But they had 6, they would have 12, 6 from each, 2 from each district. One was Kappa Kappa Psi, elected by the Kappa Kappa Psi alumni. One was elected for Tau Beta Sigma, to represent the Tau Beta Sigma alumni. And the NAA, as you heard Wendy talk about, their big focus, because they were a joint alumni association, in addition to just being able to be social and get to know people from kind of all over, was the one core joint project that Tau Beta Sigma and Kappa Kappa Psi works on was the National Intercollegiate Band. And I'm going to look to my right here, and at some point, the NIB that we all know is selected from auditions. And at some point, prior to me being in the sorority, it actually was made up of members of the convention. And it was not necessarily the selection process ahead of time in the practice going into the NIB concert as we know it today.
So there were 2 bands.
Yeah, there were 2 bands.
Yes, 1989. There was a concert band that was made up of anyone could be in it. And then there was an audition symphonic band that was made up of the audition. So at the point in 1989 was where we went to 1 band.
And so part of that 1 band piece was kind of wanting to make that a premier space. So as you heard Wendy mention, they bought the nice band folders that we all know and love, right? They made sure to purchase that. And then another thing was to celebrate and have a reception after a concert, right? You go to a band concert. I mean, you probably remember this being young. You did something with your family after a band concert. I know we always went out for ice cream afterwards. Like that was a thing. So the National Alumni Association, or NAA, was helping out with that. And a lot of their convention activities, we would do fundraising dinners, and a lot of that funds would then went back to said reception, which was available for everybody. And by everybody, not just conference attendees, but anyone who came to the concert. So those NIB band members, if their families were in attendance, they could come to the reception as well and be able to celebrate together of that. So that was a core part of what the NAA did for 10 years. And that is when I served on the NAA board. I was representing the North Central District. And during my time there, we did decide that 12 directors was probably a little too much. Too many cooks in the kitchen, right? So we did change that from 12 to 6. We did some major restructure organizations. This is when the NAA really started taking on committees, so that they had working committees outside of the conventions to help with financing and fundraising ideas, to help with membership and education of our members, whether keeping them up to date with what's happening in the organizations, or they're keeping them up to date with what the NAA directors were wanting the head to do, et cetera. So it was starting to get to this community organization. And as a joint organization, we had to be recognized by both the Board of Trustees from Tau Beta Sigma and Kappa Kappa Psi. And in the summer of 2006, Kappa Kappa Psi's Board of Trustees came to us and said, you know what? We want to move in a different direction with our alumni. And as of this week, we are no longer supporting the NAA in the current environment. And we're going to go kind of do something for Kappa Kappa Psi for alumni. So I remember some meetings that weekend discussing. I know the National Council and the Board of Trustees also went and met on their own to figure out, like, what is the right direction for the sorority? What do we want to support the sororities organizations? And from that, some directions, some changes, but this is less than a year out from convention now that we're talking about. And so the steering committee to create an alumni association organization, and what was that going to mean for the sorority? We started meeting in spring of 2007. And it was a lot of work. I've been finding all my emails from that time, but we were able to present at the 2007 National Convention, the Tau Beta Sigma Alumni Association. And many of the learnings, we took all of those learnings from the nearly 30 years prior to that, and made sure that we built upon that and not reinvent that wheel. So a lot of the structure was very similar, not identical, but very similar. The projects and programs that they started working on were things that the NAA had started doing near the end of it. We were starting to get involved in community band spaces. How do we support our alumni with scholarships to, say, graduate school or professional education and those aspects? We were starting to get outside the NIB world and into how do you support that alumni world. And we were hitting that stride. So it was really exciting to see Tau Beta Sigma take that. I had the opportunity to sit on that steering committee. I was actually the one that got to present the recommendation. I presented it to the national delegation. It was actually approved by the Board of Trustees at that convention. I found the slides the other day. Oh, it said presentation. It was kind of cool and scary to think about that time. And at that convention, they appointed the TBSAA Executive Council or Executive Committee Chair was Debbie Baker. And many of us that were on the steering committee, but not all of us, continued on into leadership. And as I mentioned in my bio, I then actually moved over to the Board of Trustees, which left a vacancy in the TBSAA to keep moving forward. And it just so happens that my replacement is sitting here next to me. And she was instrumental in really getting a lot of these ideas of Tau Beta Sigma's Alumni Association off the ground. So I'm now going to turn the microphone over to Tamara, I've been getting wrong on there. Tamara Henry, to talk about where TBSAA started as an organization and where they went.
Thank you. All right, So we started, as Kelly said, she left and I came aboard, and there was 5 of us. And as I was going through my notes, and I am concerned a little bit that you're videotaping this, but because I just don't want to get anything wrong. And I've been going through so many emails, and I don't know about you, I've changed my email account like 3 times, 4 times over the last 15 years now, that 13 years since we started, right? So it's been challenging trying to find everything because my memory, I mean, I did pledge in 92, it's not as great as it used to be. All right, so when we first started, there were, and I can tell you, they laid a good foundation, but it was definitely like starting a startup company where we were at the ground, and it was a new organization. We had to create constitutions, we had to create handbooks, like everything that you all have now was created during basically the first 2 to 3 years. And you can correct me if anything I say is wrong. Sue was also on the board, the executive committee at that time when I started. So we had the original 4 committees were finance membership, because they were together, communication and newsletter, service, and affiliates. And then in the beginning years, we had 5, but then a lot of the time it really was just 4 of us. And for a long period of time, we had trouble getting everyone through the biennium, but it was because they were moving on to greater and better things. Eventually we became a working committee of 6, which is what you all know of now. But during that time we had finance, affiliates, networking, membership, and then we started with the affiliates. And I just want to totally give a shout out to a lot of my sisters at BetaAA who I really asked for a lot of help. One of my, well, I guess she would have been a little, but she scanned the whole TBS chapter operations handbook for me. And then I went back and edited it to make it work for affiliates. And it was a lot of work. And as I was telling them, it was a lot of work during those first 8 years that I was on. So let's see.
You did an amazing job. Yes, you.
Taking other credit.
I
So,
know. Say it.
so in 2007, and I have a whole list of things, and I can give all y'all this some other time. I'm just going to try and get through it all. We had our first publication, and it was called just the newsletter, was what it actually was called back in 2007, and it went through just the introduction of the committee members. We had networking articles in it. We highlighted our affiliates. We had messages from the Board of Trustees and the National Council and different member experiences, and it went out quarterly. And eventually, I like to change things. I guess that's just my nature. So I was like, let's call it the Rhapsody. And so then it became the Rhapsody. So after our membership year also was January to December for several years. And one year we decided to change it. I feel like I kind of instituted it and then I changed my mind, but then it was, we're going to go with July to August.
I think it depended
July
on
to
what
June.
the national, we had to go with what the national headquarters wanted to.
Yeah, I really feel like they still wanted us to do it in January because they didn't have as much to do, but we decided to change it. I remember that discussion.
Okay.
And then we started the affiliates. And so everybody who had these alumni associations had to like recharter. And it was a challenge and a question about, we made everyone pay, but KSI did not. So that was a challenge. But it was a challenge. I'm also gonna try to keep my personal comments to myself today. All right, so, but our sisters went ahead and adapted, and I appreciate everyone for doing that. And again, we had a lot of programs, and without you all's financial support, we would not have been able to do a lot of these programs. So the best thing was we didn't have any money, and we were kind of working on our own. So our first summer council meeting was at my house. So we all came into, I live in a place called Springdale, Maryland, and I have a 4-bedroom house, and everybody came and stayed at my house. And that's how we had our first summer council meeting. There's no room service at my house, and but it was great, and we all got to know each other a lot better, and yeah. I was gonna say, and y'all can't come to my house again for a meeting. See, I said I was gonna try and keep all my comments to myself. All right, so a couple of the agenda items during that meeting were, of course, affiliate issues and what benefit. My question, so I was on hiatus for 10 years, and my question always is, and always had been through the whole time I was on council, was what are you gonna do for those alumni members like me? How are we going to get them back? Because I had no reason to come back and do stuff with TBSAA. For what? So how are we going to reach those members and bring them back into the fold? What benefits are we going to give to the alumni? So affiliate issues, we had the benefits. What do we extend to them? How are we going to recruit them? Of course, so now we're giving more work to national office. So how are we going to get them to go along with us giving them additional things to do? What about inactive members and people who have been expelled? How are we going to navigate that? So there was a lot of different types of issues we had, processing the forms. Our money was in the trust fund. I don't know if it's still there or not, TBS trust fund. So how do we get our money into where we can actually do working with it? Let's see. Just going through really fast. There's lots of stuff on here. Oh, and the election process, we had to determine. So the election process, now it's before convention. Before it was after convention. So people would come and, you know, give their platforms like they would do for national council and so forth. But then after we left convention, then we'd actually have the election. So I think my last year was when we actually had the elections before, because we wanted to have an opportunity to transition the officers, kind of like they do for nationals. But so I feel like we had a learning curve as during that 8 years, because we were trying things out. Let's see if this works. And then came to where we are right now. All right, so so a lot of the time we weren't exactly treated as equals. I'm also not trying to get myself in trouble. We were not, so now you have like, it's almost the 3 equal groups. It wasn't like that at the beginning. We were, in a sense, I guess, having to try to prove ourselves. So 2009, only Chris and I, Chris was the chair during that time. Chris Vanacore, yes. There's so many Chris's, yes. Chris Vanacore, she was the chair, and only she and I actually got invited to come to the winter council meeting. It wasn't like it is now where the whole crew goes. It was just the 2 of us. And I actually wasn't invited to go to the majority of the meetings. I was kind of just there. And she and I would have discussions on the side. So, and whereas now Chris is part of the National Council, I think, like you get to go to meetings still. That was not the case either. So we really had to work to become like accepted. That's a good word. Thank you. Accepted, or just thought of seriously to some degree. Like, we're a group, we're here and we're doing our work, and you need to just keep us in the loop. So, so we developed our track. We were like, we're going to have an alumni track. The whole point with this was to try and get the alumni apart from the actives information. During that meeting, I was like, I don't want to be called the committee. Let's be called the executive council. So that's when the executive council got birth. I like to change names and stuff. So then we did the support the music, support the sorority, of course. And so one thing that I was excited to see in one of the emails I received was that you all finally hit, or we all finally hit 500 members. We were trying to become an affiliate of MENC, MENC, yes, the music educators. I don't know. Is it National I don't know what the C stands for, but anyways, and they would not allow us to be an affiliate of theirs, and so now we can. So I will give you all the back. Chris made a lot of contacts with a lot of groups, and so now we can do that, and that's exciting for all of the music educators that are out there. And professional development was really, really important to us. And then Scott McCambridge came on, and we started our mentoring program back in 2009. So our first national convention, our first official national convention was 2009. One of the exciting things about that was we gave out the daily rhapsody of daily events that were going on for the conference, especially for the alumni. And Chris spent a lot of time working on that, God bless her soul. And we started sponsoring an alumni suite jointly, KKSI. We had dinners there. We were at the Biltmore, which was not local to any food places. So we offered like $5 dinners. So we cooked in our suite. It was awesome. And we were able to provide that service for anybody who wanted to pay some money and not have to buy expensive food at the location. And we also sold flowers at the convention. We raised money, we sold donuts, we did roses and carnations. We were just trying to get everyone out there, yes, out there and just be recognized, and because we were here and we're working hard, very hard. Benefits, scrolling. In 2010, that was when Chris became a member of the National Council, ex officio member of the National Council. And we had, because we originally always had a member of the Board of Trustees and a member of the National Council who came to all of our meetings, but we weren't ever able to go to their meetings. So then in 2010, she started going to the National Council meetings, but we still don't go to my knowledge, trustees meetings, correct? Okay. We still have some work to do. All right, so we were also, so I feel like also it depends on the personalities of who are in these organizations. She was a part of DCI, so she did they had picnics at the DCI, whatever the DCI people do, but I know that she had some picnics with them and organized some social gatherings with all those people. In 2011, we started bringing speakers, professional speakers to the conventions. So we had our own track, but then we also started bringing speakers. And then up until 2011, we were jointly sponsoring with KSI alumni, the NIB programs. And then we started sponsoring it ourselves because when you have membership fees, then you can have money to do things. So then we started sponsoring the programs on our own because we had some money. All right, and then we also did a March for Music in 2013. 2013 was the first time that we offered a Distinguished Alumni Award. I became Special Projects Chair in 2013, so I put together a cruise that we did to the Bahamas. And we also did our first woman in music speaker as well. So in addition to the one that convention was offering, we also had a second person come in and do a woman in music speaker. So 2013, I'm just running through this really fast and I know we're probably over time. In 2013, so what is exciting about working with alumni, I feel like I was almost an elementary school teacher, so I was exciting. Life was exciting. You come to these meetings, and I loved working with my committees, and my committees were amazing. And I totally didn't read this whole thing that I wrote about how awesome it's been working with all of the people, all the district officers that have come through the organization, all the persons who have left our group and have also become counselors, national council members. we always felt that this group would be a place where we could foster leadership. Not only in the sorority, but in your outside lives. But that was something that we really wanted to do, was to foster the ability for everyone to be, great leaders. And I feel like we have done that. And the people that I've seen, I went up to Shaylin today and I was like, you're on my committee. I'm so excited. You're a counselor now. Like I to some degree, I feel a little bit, proud of these people that are coming through. But I think that because that was one of our goals. And I think that we were succeeding at making our goals during that time. So, and I missed some stuff and I feel bad. But so 2015 was the year that we decided, well, 2013 was an awesome national convention, and as special projects chair, we came up with like this list of cool things to do. And I was like, yes, we're gonna do it. Let's go big. And so that's what we did. 2014, we came up with the grant program led by Marcus White, who I believe is in the room. And we came up with our 3 categories of the grant program: music program, sorority service, and professional development, which we intended was to be a 3-tiered program where we would have had 1 grant trickling in every 2 years and then having 3. The first award was given in 2015 at National Convention, so that was exciting. In 2015, the Distinguished Alumni Award, who was led by Allison Lehman, who is the outgoing district counselor for Northeast. We named it the Sue Robash card. And they also came up with the criteria for this Distinguished Alumni Award that we have now. In 2015, we held an 5K in person in Maryland at Merriweather Post Pavilion, led by, we had 1 lead, and then it ended up being me, which was fine. And it was a great experience. That was my first opportunity really working with corporations, different groups, and so forth, and like really, truly organizing something that was big and meaningful. At that time, the 5K was, I organized it so that people who registered were able to select a school that they wanted the money to go to. And so a portion of the proceeds went to each of the schools that had been identified. And for me, that I was really giving back to our community in school programs. I like that it's still going to programs but it just felt so like one of the checks I hand delivered, and I got to take a picture with the band director, who was also a sister, and she didn't even know that people had identified her school as one of the recipients, and it was amazing. So that was like just awesome. So that's when the 5K started, was in 2015, and I feel like that's all I've got for you. But all right, I'm very proud of the work that we did and the programs that we started. It was truly an honor to be selected to serve.
I want to thank Chris for recognizing that alumni history is part of our sorority history. Because I was really like, oh, yeah, we should probably do something that I've never really thought about it. It's in my basement. Okay. So this is the start of things. Working with Sue and Debbie, Kelly, and Tamara has been a great honor, and I hope that for this group as well, this is just the beginning, and we will pull in others to contribute because there are many. We are so blessed to have so many alumni members who've contributed, and that can help all of you as you move forward. Like Tamara said, it has been awesome to see members go from being active through the ranks of different leadership positions, taking time off, coming back on, all of the things that we do in life, to then work their way to whatever's their potential. You're not looking. My personal challenge to TBSAA Executive Council is to continue this work and ask, Kelly had said that, we built on the foundation. Yes and no. Like, the steering committee led into the task force, but the steering committee was largely like, I felt like starting from a blank slate. And then I know like TBSAA starting didn't necessarily go back and say, okay, what did the NAA do? Like, they may look at the Constitution, but they may not have looked at the projects. And so they're like, we came up with these grants. And we're like, yeah, we did grants too. Oh, okay. So let's not lose that again. Let's come back to that. Thank you for your time. One more time, because I like to repeat myself, alumni history is sorority history. And obviously, I think, hopefully we've made the point that each alumni meeting and activity in the past has created the foundation for what we have now as TBSAA, so they did not drop out of the sky. But yet they have been their own thing. And we personally, I think all 5 of us clearly think, not that it's a competition, but that this organization is strong and vital and moving in a positive, fabulous direction. We are so proud of you. This is just the beginning. Thank you.
I have to thank all of these amazing women. Thanks to my particular age group, I have personal relationships with all of them. I've known Wendy since the night I went through first degree. I served with Tamara for 2 years. It was an amazing experience. We were before they made it. Debbie Kaplan presided over the first national convention I went to, which you heard us referencing that convention on Tuesday when we were sharing memories. And also, she's a fellow Houstonian, and I see her around town periodically, and it's always super special. And then Sukar, who is one of my predecessors as chair and a resource that we always have. So thank you all. And we're going to take 2 minutes to transition the DC back up because we got business to do. Let's do it real quick.